Well, I guess when I say money, I mean data. Because for an attack, the data is money, right? And so once the hacker downloads data, it's easy enough to sell it, and that becomes money very quickly. So, and of course, from the victim, the target's perspective, it becomes a lot of money because one, their users and employees' data has been compromised, which means they now have to spend money to be able to mitigate that. They have reputational damage. So this right here, okay, is the payload, okay, that's coming from the previous build DWP payload right here. So it's going ahead and posting this payload to the SharePoint server.
Hey everyone, it's David Bommel back with the amazing OTW. Great to have you back on the show. It's been too long.
Oh, David, thank you very much for having me back on the best cybersecurity and IT YouTube channel. I'm always appreciated and honored to be on the show.
It's great to have you here, and congratulations, man. New book. So I'm glad to see that this has come out now.
Thanks. It's been a long process. It should have been out a couple of years ago, but we finally got it out. It's all updated for the latest versions of Kali. And a lot of things have changed in Debian, Kali, in the intervening years. So we've updated the book and put a few new exercises and information in there, as well as put a chapter in on using AI in cybersecurity.
That's great. So I said in learning Linux, a really important topic if you want to become a OTW. You're a strong believer in that, I know. Have a look at this book. Have a look at the reviews on Amazon, one of the best-selling books on Linux. Also, have a look at this book from OTW, Network Basics for Hackers, as well as Getting Started Becoming a Master Hacker. OTW, you've also got Python for Hackers coming out soon, I hope. No pressure.
Yes, it's coming out this fall. Working on it as we speak, and hopefully it'll be out. It's scheduled to come out in September. We're still shooting for that date. Not just be a little bit late, but the most important thing is to come out with a great book instead of meeting a particular deadline. So there's a possibility it might be a little bit later in September, but not much.
Really glad to hear that because I know a lot of people are looking forward to that book as well. But OTW, what's happening in the news? I've read so many things about SharePoint. I believe there's a 0 day, and I also believe you've got a demo that you can share. So perhaps you can take us on the journey, what's been going on, and talk about the demo.
Yes, well, one of the things that's happened real time right now is that the SharePoint servers around the globe are being attacked. There's been a number of different exploits, 0 days that have been out there, and the folks who are running SharePoint are in scramble mode right now, trying to keep their systems from being compromised. This is one more exploit, one more vulnerability exploit against SharePoint, and it's a serious one. It's one that basically the attacker can bypass authentication, and then once they bypass authentication, can use a deserialization vulnerability to run their own code in SharePoint. One of the other things that's kind of interesting, it's basically it's a vulnerability that applies to all of the recent and the old SharePoint. But the old SharePoints are not being patched. So 2010, 2013, Microsoft is not patching those. So if you're running those in your organization, you're going to have to do something else. You're going to either have to upgrade or do some other mitigate controls on that system. So this is a very serious exploit. I've got a copy of a POC. One of the POCs. There's a few proof of concepts out there. Of course, the attackers have been attacking this for, as we speak right now, for over a week, about 10 days or so. And they've been attacking primarily government SharePoints. So it looks like it's Chinese attackers, Chinese APT attacking government SharePoints and then taking control. And then even after the vulnerability is closed, it doesn't mean necessarily that the attackers are out. So you can close the vulnerability, but they're still inside your system. So this is pretty serious. And if you're running the old versions of 2010, 2013 SharePoint, then what happens is that you don't have any patches whatsoever. So, folks, this is real important. And what I'd like to do at this point is to talk about what a deserialization exploit looks like, and what it is, and then show you the real exploit and how it works. So in a lot of applications, especially in web applications, we have this process that's called serialization. Serialization basically takes input data and then converts it so that it can be transferred to other applications. And so it takes a bunch of data and basically serializes it, puts it into a long string, and then passes it to something like JSON or other applications that can use that data. So there's a process of serializing the data, right? It's taking the data and basically making it into a long string. And then there's deserialization that takes place inside the application. Now, if the attacker is able to put data into the serialized data, for instance, shellcode, then what happens is that when it's deserialized, then the result is that you get remote code execution. You get a shellcode running inside of the application. Now, this has been a problem for a long time in a lot of applications, particularly in Java applications. Those of you who've been around the industry remember there was the Apache struts deserialization. Probably the one that had the most impact previously was that in the Oracle. In Oracle's middleware, the Java middleware, there was all kinds of deserialization problems, and Oracle databases run the world. Right? Oracle databases run all of the major financial institutions and big corporations, what have you. So this was a really serious vulnerability and exploit. Back, I think it's like 2017, 2018. Somebody tell me if there was one in the Apache one was in 2015. So it was about the same time that we had the deserialization problem with Java in Oracle's applications. So the important point I wanted to make here is that when applications serialize data, it's possible to put in remote code, put in shellcode inside of that data. If it's user input data that's then serialized, then at the deserialization process inside the application, that shellcode can then be executed as it's deserialized. Most applications test try to sanitize the input when it comes in. But in reality, it should be sanitized before it ever goes in, before it's ever serialized. So most applications do a sanitization process after it's deserialized. That's too late. It has some sanitization process at the input level, and that's the primary problem here with the SharePoint application, is that it allows the serialization process to take place without any sanitization. And then when it passes into the application, it's then deserialized, and it's too late then to be able to check for what is it? What did we serialize? What is it we serialize? Oh my God, we serialized shellcode. Oh, too late now. And so this is a process that we see at a type of vulnerability we see year in and year out. And it's not just Microsoft. It's Oracle, it's Apache struts, it's in many different processes. If you just look at CVE database for deserialization vulnerabilities, you'll find lots of them. So what I wanted to do now is to show you the process of deserialization and a proof of concept of basically a 0 day of this SharePoint application. So let me open it up.
At the time of this recording, it's still raging, right? I mean, there's malware being implemented, stuff. Sorry, go on.
It's still raging. It's as we're speaking right now, it's raging across the globe because SharePoint is largely used in organizations large organizations, medium to large organizations, where you're sharing information, sharing data. And so once the attacker gets inside of the SharePoint, they can pivot to other applications. So it's not just limited to SharePoint. Once I'm inside, once the attacker is inside your application, then they can pivot to any other applications that are connected to SharePoint. That can be user database, it can be employee database. And companies around are scrambling to mitigate the functions of SharePoint. Microsoft pointed out that this is a exploit of a patch. Microsoft put out a patch just a couple of months ago of the patch, right? And so it's somebody doing a job at Microsoft properly. And so we've got one other important point about this particular exploit is that Microsoft, so in the US and in other countries as well, but the US is what I know best, there is an effort by cybersecurity organizations to share information. So if I'm Microsoft and I see vulnerability next to me, or somebody's informed me of it, what I'm supposed to do is I'm supposed to share that information with other companies. So, okay, hey, I got this vulnerability, and I need to let you guys know that this is a serious problem and you need to do something about your systems. So this is a government sponsor, a government corporate partnership of sharing information. Microsoft thinks that somebody in that group that they share the information with filled the information to APT hackers. And so, wow, as soon as they shared it, immediately started getting attacked. Right. So this is kind of an important piece of the whole picture of this particular unique application's unique vulnerability, is that it might be the information sharing process itself that is flawed. And one of the things that people have mentioned, and I guess I'm a little bit reluctant to mention this, but I will anyway, so you guys can do with it whatever you want, that Microsoft pointed out that there are two Chinese companies within this information sharing, and they have implied that they may have shared this in China. But that's a whole other issue, all right? That's a whole other. That's a kind of worms, yeah. Yes, a big can of worms. All right, so let's take a look though. Probably more importantly for most of our viewers is that how does this exploit actually work? Right? Here's a proof of concept, and you can see that it's a Python script, which I should point out is most of the exploits are written in Python. And there's one more reason why everybody who's in our industry should learn Python. And that's a plug for my book. Python, just like everybody should know Linux. Everybody should know network Python. Now, it's not just Python, but Python, 90% of all applications. So, okay, so let's take a look at this. Those of you who know Python, these are all the imports that all being lined up. We told you all of them, but that's not. It's probably more than what most people want. What I want to really do is to go to, there's a function down here, okay? Here's creating a session. Here's the function creates a session. Okay? So basically, it's going ahead and create a session on the SharePoint server. There's a normalization of URL. And one of the things that to note here is that there's a user agent, a unique user agent that's created here. And then it attempts to normalize the URL. Another function, detect SharePoint. Okay? And the next function is extract the site client tenant, and then build the DWP payload. This is build the DWP payload. What this is doing is it's creating the payload that's going to be serialized and then deserialized. Right? I also should point out tag is actually two parts. It's actually two ways. What's happening is that application filter text button, and that's what this is doing. And here's the payload being built. Okay, we want to go over those version extraction, but all we want to do is look at that particular. So this right here, that's coming from the previous build payload. And so it's going ahead and post it to the SharePoint server. Serialize these. So this is probably the most important part. There's lots of things that are going on here, but there's a couple other things I want to point out. Here's the layout, the tool pane, right? This is called the tool pane exploit, right? So the patch that Microsoft put out, I think it was in May. So this is actually an exploit of that patch, right? So here's the, this is going ahead and parsing the URL here, the target URL, and then it's going down and posting. This is the payload that was built in this exploit sheet. This is the payload that implies data, compressed and serialized data. It delivers that to this URL here, right? This is the URL it's delivering it to. It sets the header, okay, right here. And what happens is that it sets the header. What this particular SharePoint does is that it basically tracks this user by the header, okay? What it's doing is it's setting the header out. See that right there? It's kind of a really way of tracking state. It's a lazy way. It's a lazy way that's off, made a mistake. And then it goes ahead and posts to a particular URL. And if it gets a 20x delivered, and then if it gets anything, as you know, a 200 is that it's a successful connection. So we go to a website, now there's these codes and H200 success. We all know that the 400s are 200 right here. The status is otherwise unexpected status. That's what, right? So those are the main portion of this proof of concept. Probably the most important is one, it goes ahead and right? As earlier here, so detect SharePoint. Go to the client site tag here, and then it builds the payload. This is basically building the payload that's going to get passed, to the server. When it's deserialized, it's going to code on the server. So then the exploit goes ahead, it looks for this URL right here, and then it sends a post to this payload that's being generated. So that, and then this gets passed through the serialization process and then the deserialization process, and voila, we have a shellcode on the other end of the SharePoint server. Once I have shellcode on the other end of the SharePoint server, and I can traverse that entire network. Because remember, the SharePoint is shared. That's the whole point. It's shared by many, many systems, right? And as the attacker gets inside the SharePoint server, it can pivot to any one of those other systems that are using SharePoint, which makes it really, really difficult to extract. One, to find. Two, to extract once you find it. Okay? So just kind of a good example of an excellent Python script to be able to write your own 0-day. What this particular person did is that they looked at the vulnerability and understood what was happening with the vulnerability and wrote this. I would say that I wrote it, I didn't. I got GitHub. There's 2 or 3 of them on GitHub. This is one of them. And so I want to give that fellow who wrote this credit.
Yeah, definitely. OTW, have you tested this in a lab or somewhere?
I have tested it, and it doesn't.
OTW, I know that it's in hacking videos and other videos. You use this on real stuff, and unfortunately, we can't demo that on YouTube. But I'm glad to hear that you've tested it and it works. Like lab, have you tested it?
Yeah, it does work. And this particular one is by a fellow by the name of Sultan Ali Zero. And there's another one on GitHub by Mohammed Wasim 29. Both of those. The one that's by Mohammed Wasim is simpler. It's a more simple, streamlined, not quite as complex as this one. So either one of those work. Right?
It's amazing. It's such, this one's only like 140 odd lines of Python code that it can be such a serious problem.
Right. It's pretty simple. It's pretty simple. 140 lines. So it doesn't take much. The key parts are building the payload, are finding the SharePoint servers, identifying the SharePoint, have one of the vulnerable versions, and then creating the right here, and then sending that to the proper, see it right here, to and sending post build that particular URL. It allows that data to pass right into every.
I've got to ask you the question, right? Because this is YouTube. You and I have had many discussions of YouTube versus real world. A lot of people might say, well, you shouldn't be using Microsoft. Who uses it? I mean, we're talking about lots of companies, right?
Oh, yeah. There are a lot of companies. First of all, let's be clear. Microsoft is the biggest software company in the world. Right? Not everybody uses it, but a lot of people, particularly in the corporate environment, people all use Microsoft. Right? You and I use Linux, what have you, but in the corporate world, Microsoft is the standard everybody uses. Not everybody uses SharePoint, but a lot of companies do. And once they do, this is a way for them to share lots of data across the whole corporate infrastructure. If they're using it right now, they're scrambling to be able to mitigate and patch this particular vulnerability. And the problem, of course, as I said, is that if they're already been hacked, putting a patch in is like closing the door after the horses have already been released, right? So once they're inside your system, it's a lot bigger job to get them out. Right? Once they're inside, so you can patch your system. That'll keep any new people from coming in. But once somebody's inside your system, it's a big job to trace them and find them and eliminate them from your. A lot of companies right now around the globe be able to mitigate this particular vulnerability. Now, which means there's a lot of money at risk.
Yeah, exactly.
Data. Well, I guess when I say money, for an attacker, so once the hacker down easy enough to sell it, There's lots of places to sell the data. That becomes money very quickly. So, and of course, from the victim, the target's perspective, it becomes a lot of money because one, their user employees' data has been compromised, which means they now have to spend money to be able to mitigate that. They have reputational damage. When the reputation has been damaged, you say, what do you mean my data has been compromised? As I'm the customer, right? I'm looking for some big banking organization, and I have all my clients, my customers. Well, that's not going to go over well. That's going to lose some customers. It's going to cost a lot of money. Right? And we're talking not about $1, $10, thousands. We're talking millions, maybe even tens of millions of dollars in damage. So oftentimes when a company announces that they've been compromised in this way, and that their customer data has been compromised, if they're a publicly traded company, it means that they're traded on stock. It's not unusual to see these big company stocks drop by billions of dollars. I can remember in the Target, whatever it was, the values are made to be retail in the United States. The Target had cost the neighborhood of $1 billion in their stock once that was revealed. So companies who are vulnerable to this, maybe that's something that's serious or scramble mode. It's time to up cybersecurity. Yes, it's time to figure out what the heck happened to us in the last week. Right? So this may be exactly what happened to many of these companies. And they're going to be scrambling for a while to try to extract the attackers from their system, because it could be.
The problem is it's ADP, just how do you say, like single. These are like hardcore guys.
In other space, right? This is APT. This is APT largely from what I've been told. So that means they're pretty sophisticated attackers. That means they're going to do a good job of hiding themselves in their system and building in back doors that they can go ahead and exfiltrate your data.
OGW, as always, thanks so much for sharing, your thoughts on stuff like this, and also having, the code so we can look at what the zero-day code looks like. I wish we could have demoed this, but obviously for YouTube, we're going to not do that. But thanks for sharing that you've actually tested it in your lab or wherever. OGW, as always, thanks so much for sharing, and like teaching people how to be more secure and how to improve their lives by studying.
Yeah, I think you're very welcome, David. I just wanted to point out a couple of things that, as everybody knows, of course, first of all, these types of attacks happen continuously. They happen continuously.
Yeah.
If you're in the cybersecurity industry, you know this is to happen. This one is getting a lot of press right now, but it happens daily, right, around it. And so one of the things you need to do is be aware of these types of attacks that are out there. So you gotta keep your eye out to see, what the latest, what's the new exploits that are taking place are, to be able to protect your organization. The other thing I want to point out is that AI is coming very quickly. We all know, right? It's happening very, very quickly. And so it's going to be a threat. It already is a threat to low-level jobs. So the low-level jobs in our industry are quickly being replaced by AI. We're going to see a lot of that taking place maybe sooner. And so this is why people should be able to learn every day new things, because this is going to keep you ahead. If you are static, what you know, and your knowledge, AI is going to replace you. If you are ahead, always learn every day, you can stay ahead of the AI and therefore maintain your status and advance. That's why so much involved to learn every day. You need to be studying every day to be able to stay ahead of what the AI. And we're seeing that simple stuff being replaced by AI clients. So my advice to everybody is to try to learn something new cybersecurity every day.
To get you back, OTW, just for everyone who's watching, we had some offline discussions. It'd be great to get you back, perhaps talking about AI and doing a demo of AI and how it can be leveraged, but also quantum. Great to get you back to talk about quantum and how it's going to affect cryptography.
I think that's a real important issue, that quantum computers, quantum cryptography is happening. It's going to happen pretty soon. Although it's probably quantum cryptography and quantum computers are probably 5 to 10 years away in commercial applications. But APT is going to happen soon, like 2 or 3 years. And then what happens when APT has quantum computing? That means that all of our cryptography is going to be vulnerable. So as listeners know, that things like RSA is no secret what the algorithm is. It's expensive. It means that it takes a lot of computing power. But once you apply quantum computers to RSA gets broken in a matter of seconds, right? So this is going to make some happen in our industry. And that's what I want to talk about next time.
Yeah, look forward to it. So everyone who's watching, put your comments below other topics that you want OTW to cover. Look forward to that next one, OTW. Thanks so much.
Thanks, David. See you soon.
About to arrive at the destination, please choose a safe place to park.
Choose the worst place to park.
It doesn't matter how much time passes, how much else changes, some things always stay the same. It doesn't matter if all of the tech, all of the programming languages, the entire world changes, some devs will always attempt to do others have tried to do in the past, think they are going to do it better because, well, obviously they're the ones that are doing it. So this is a post from April 2000. Things you should never do. It's going to have some very decent examples. The main example turns out to actually be a good.
Report.
State 6.0 is finally going into beta. There never was a version 5.0. The last major release version 1.0 was released almost 3 years ago. 3 years is an awfully long time in the internet world. During this time, Netscape sat by helplessly as their market share plummeted. It's a bit smart of me to criticize them for waiting so long between releases, but they did it purposely, did they? Well, yes, they did. They didn't make the single worst strategic mistake that any software company can make. They decided to rewrite the code from scratch. And all these years later, it's not like the idea of rewriting something has just gone away. Nowadays, though, the exciting language to do it in is Rust. Now, I am not going to tell you that there are no valid reasons to rewrite a project, whether in Rust or C++ or any other language that you might be writing it into. But if that is going to be done, thought and care, and not as the first thing we tried, rewriting into a new language, rewriting into a new toolkit isn't going to fix all of your problems, and in many ways may introduce new ones if not done with extreme care. Orland made the same mistake when they bought for Windows. Microsoft always made that word for Windows from scratch in a new project, Pyramid, which was shut down, thrown away, and swept under the rug. Lucky for Microsoft, they had never code the ship, making it nearly instantly. This is a really hard thing to find information. Microsoft Project Pyramid, you probably get in the general direction. It's something which most people kind of forgotten existed, and even at the time wasn't really getting that much in the way of. So it's really hard records about this still existing. They're programmers. Programmers are in their hearts architects, and the first thing they want to do when they get to a site is bulldoze the place flat and build something brand. We're not excited by incremental renovation. If you're even remotely competent, and this does create problems, but if you have at least some basic level of programming knowledge and you understand how to break down a problem, it can be very easy to fall into a trap that you think you can do it better. You think you can make a better sorting algorithm. You think you can make a better game engine. You think you can make all manner of better things. And maybe you can, right? I'm not going to tell you not to do it. At the same time, keep in mind that a project that's been around for a very long time has had a lot of time to be polished, especially if a lot of people have had their eyes on it. It's been used by a lot of people. And chances are, you actually aren't going to do it better. In fact, you might not even realize why you didn't do it better. However, and I know I fall into this as well, it's very easy to get caught up in your ego and think that because you're the one that's doing it and you understand how you think and you don't understand how other people think, that you're going to do it better than them. There's this sort of reason that programmers always want to throw away the code and start over. The reason is they think the old code is a mess. And here is the interesting observation. They are probably wrong. The reason that they think the old code is a mess is because part of the fundamental law of programming code then gets right, especially so if it's somebody else's code. If it's code you've never seen before, you don't even have any idea about their coding style, it's going to be weird unless it very much aligns with your own style. But even more so, there is somebody very close to you that you don't recognize the style. You from years ago, have you ever gone back and looked at like a 5 or 10-year-old project you have, and you look at it and it's like, why? What do you do? Why did I write it like this? What? And how? How did I ever think this was a good idea? If this hasn't happened, either you really got to write code and have always been good at it, or you probably haven't improved. Reuse is hard. This is why everybody on your team has a different function. They like to use splitting strings into arrays of strings. They write their own function because it's easier and more fun than figuring out how the old function works. This is exactly it. A lot of people really like the challenge of building something from scratch, starting with a greenfield project, but having to come in and deal with what somebody else did before you, unless you really like that project or you're getting paid for it, it can be very difficult to sort of motivate yourself to sit down and do the boring part, which is understand what somebody before you did before you get to the fun part of hacking on it and seeing what else you can do. The idea that new code is better than old is patently absurd. Now, this doesn't mean new code can't be better and new code can't be and not reintroduces old problems and do things better. But old code does come with a lot of benefits. Old code has been used. It has been tested. Lots of bugs have been found and they have been fixed. There's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't require bugs just sitting around on your hard drive. Now, I will disagree with these 2 points. There may be something wrong with it, and there may be justification for rewriting it as something new. But in a lot of cases, you might be better off just ironing out those problems. And it technically doesn't acquire new bugs by just sitting around. However, the dependencies of the code may change and may and subtle bugs that your code isn't the reason for it. It's because everything else is changing. However, in a general sense, though, older is more likely to be more well tested and in a better state for a project or something that's just done as a rewrite, again, without really careful planning to make sure you don't introduce going back to some old code looking like functions pages long. None of this stuff belongs in here. Or jumping ahead. Yes, I know it's a simple function to display a window, but it has grown little hairs and stuff on it that nobody knows why. Well, I'll tell you why today. Those are and any little project is even really big projects, right? I did a video the other day. I don't know if it's uploaded yet. There is a very minor change. This is a problem that's been there for about 32-ish years. A very simple project where on ARM64 platforms, the head system with 64K pages versus 4 is causing applications to break in inconsistent. It was introduced 30 years ago, and there was probably a reason. And right now, the solution is just now. Is the correct approach to be doing is by doing so. At the same time, you should naively remove things like this. They were added there for a reason, and you need to work out if that reason is still valid or if that reason ever exists in the version. If you throw away code and from scratch, you would throw away all that knowledge. Fixes years of programming. You throw away your market leadership. You're giving a gift of 12 years to competitors. That is a long time in software years. This person approached it. Again, we talked about Netscape. This is back in 5 days. So approach is very much from a more pretty perspective. But there is still value in this in the open source side as well, because let's say you have let's say you're writing a driver in one language and you want to rewrite it into another. You're going to have multiple years where those drivers basically don't move unless somebody's also maintaining the original one. And if somebody's maintaining the original one, it raises the question of, well, what are you actually doing with this rewrite? And you're sort of effectively creating these two branching paths, as there's always going to be reasons to keep that on alive. You'll bring yourself in an extremely dangerous position where you'll be shipping old versions of code years changes to react to new features that you don't have shipped code. You might need to disclose business for that duration. You're wasting an outlandish amount of money writing code that already exists. At the time, the consensus seemed to be that the Netscape code was really bad. However, it existed and it did work. Again, the new code might be better, and we can look at cases like with the Perl rewrite, or the MediaWiki rewrite, or PHP, or Netscape in the years to come, turning into Firefox, which early on was a really massive success. So even though at the time there might be some criticism about this move, in the long run, it did turn out to be a good thing. It's just the time frame was quite a bit longer than a lot of people were hoping. Now, there's this interesting thing that happens where people have this weird ego that thinks what they're going to do will have written, but at the same time, they acknowledge the fact that their own code might be a mess, and their own code is also a problem. However, other people's code is really worse. It's a weird problem with the humans. There are architect problems. Code is not factored correctly. The networking code is popping up just from the middle of nowhere. This should have been handled in the UI code. These problems can be solved by factoring and changing interfaces. By one kernel working carefully and checking in his changes all at once is the second reason processing the code is mess is that it is inefficient. It would be slow. But this only affects a small part of the project which can optimize or even rewrite. You don't have to rewrite the whole thing. Another thing is people are really bad at guessing what is actually causing issues, and will say, I should optimize this section, when if you were to actually do a proper analysis of the code base, you'd realize that part is only a very small part of the equation, and there is this giant thing over here that you probably should fix, but that's a lot harder to deal with. Third is your code might just be kind of ugly. One project I worked on actually had a data type called f string. Another project started using the convention of starting member variables with an underscore, but later switched to the more standard M underscore. So half the function started with underscore and half with M underscore, which looked ugly. Frankly, either of these looked ugly, and neither is a good approach, and you should just come with a better system. But at the same time, this would be easy to solve by just using any sort of tool, Emacs or anything else. Just make sure you don't accidental problems by changing characters you didn't mean to change. Or remember that when you start from scratch, there's absolutely no reason to do a better job than you did the first time. First of all, you probably don't actually have more experience. What you have that code base that exists there, and hopefully understand well enough to not make the same mistakes again. But in many cases, a pretty high chance will introduce those same problems, very likely new ones. If you're mentally, you may want to a function wrote last week when you think other than an algorithm to class to make it easy to use. That's fine too. But throwing away the whole program is dangerous folly. And if Netscape, I do love the Netscape example. If Netscape actually had some adult supervision with software industry experience in the foot so badly. I guess you'd find out in the future. Maybe it was probably a good idea. Sweat. Now, all of this does raise some good points about doing a rewrite. At the same time, if you're not doing a rewrite, and there are actual real problems, and you're slowly taking it carefully, you can do it. There is still that long time, and that's a problem that can't really be overcome without just not doing a rewrite. What sort of we have regarding releases? You're doing something in a way with doing a rewrite because they're still on the project, and it's not like stopped, but is what it is. Is what it is. People are always going to rewrite languages or new toolkits or just it's the same thing, but they think they can do it better. And that's just the nature of people happy mind and want to learn how things work and better because they think they can do it better. Let me know about your experience. Have you ever been in a situation where you felt like it was good what you wanted, but you thought it's your own code base or something else? I'd love to know. First, subscribe to the video. Go and one of
Where we at, Rivals? What day?
Yeah, dude, that's going to be me.
Yeah, thank you.
I bet it's news this week. Today we're going to be talking about new updates, Linux, and we're first start out with some Rust updates as Linux kernel version 6.17 is receiving more Rust updates. This version of Linux continues to integrate the Rust programming languages. Kernel, including new modules, features, great improvements, expanded tool, big adaptive adder. As a whole new language gets integrated, this is my first that has merges that you already have from elsewhere through bases. So I provided this that of the test merge instead of the general. Still include those changes in short log and tag message. But in short, the Rust changes for version 6.17 are what I laid out here on the right-hand side at the beginning of the video. Big deal for Rust in the Linux kernel, as we are going to see more and more implementation of it continue on to newer versions of the kernel. So here's a really interesting one for GNOME, as a new AI-powered virtual assistant is going to get into the GNOME desktop. That's right here. The Newell project has reached an official 1.0 release 5 days ago, and Newell is your ultimate virtual assistant. What it does is it allows you to run and perform tasks, including searching the web, terminal commands, file management, document editing, and more, and supports local language models as well as the online ones like OpenAI, Gemini, Grok, so on and so forth, but basically gives you these features here, which include things like running mini apps, integrated web browser, built-in terminal, file editor, so on and so forth, and can do a lot for your system. This is very interesting as it's one of the first attempts to integrate AI directly into the Linux desktop, especially for GNOME. It demonstrates how the growing market for LLMs and voice-assisted bots in open source environments is actually a big deal. This is now available on FlatHub, and of course the code is available here on GitHub. It's an interesting step forward for the GNOME desktop as it came into the 2.10 periodic updates for news in this week in GNOME. A few small things like the GNOME core apps and libraries got updated, Circle apps and libraries as well. But by far the biggest announcement here is again, Newell 1.0 has been released, a huge release of this AI assistant for GNOME. Let's briefly watch the video here as it shows you some integrated use of the actual AI assistant. It goes through things pretty quickly here, but you kind of get the gist of what you can do, including adding things like third-party extensions and navigating the web using Outlook to edit events, all through the Navigator. And it's very interesting. It is nice that you can integrate that stuff with the desktop. That way you can perform desktop tasks. Very interesting in how all of this is going to play out and whether other Linux desktop environments are going to go down this route as well, as this is the first production-ready AI system that we're seeing on Linux. Now I want to talk about major speed boosts. But before we do, if you enjoy videos like this, take a moment and subscribe below. If you wouldn't want to miss another video, YouTube can get finicky. Also, smash that like button so this gets out to more people. Let's talk about major speed x86 games architecture. As the specs 2508 is released, big juicy JIT optimizations. And for those of you that don't know what FEX is fast emulation execution, as they steal the X from execution. That's why it's called FEX. It's an open source user wrote emulator that allows x86-64 Linux binaries to run on ARM64 Linux systems. It's a great tool for people running ARM right now, as it allows them to run Linux applications and games from the x86 architecture. You can think of newer laptops or even Raspberry Pi 5, Apple M1, M2, M3, so on and so forth, being able to run Linux games and apps, including things like Steam on an ARM-based system. It really bridges that gap between the two, as we really at the moment. Focused on when it comes to Linux. Either big, juicy, just-in-time JIT optimizations really improve how much performance has been, all they call it, lifted. To start off, let's show off some of the performance graphs for a handful of games. What this shows here is the varying different games, including Cyberpunk 2077, Stray, got it, Doom 2016, Grim, Fandango, Mastered, and Teardown. All seeing massive improvements, the biggest improvement being right under 40% FPS improvement by using the latest and greatest effects release code, 2508 versus 2507. Incredible. And some of these other games are seeing 20 to 30% gain as well. And that's how better just-in-time compilation using CPU's call return prediction helps run games much better. And we'll only continue to see improvements as now the average FPS for running games like Doom here went from 150 frames per second to around 107. or if you just look at Cyberpunk, which is probably one of the most intensive resource using games, went from 50 to almost 70 frames per second. That's a big jump. Very cool for people using ARM. Let's keep moving on. As we already talked about GNOME, I want to talk about KDE. As we receive the day to night theme switching, well, this has already been a part of KDE for quite a while, but we're finally getting support for automatic day-night theme. A requested feature. I'm super glad to see this finally. Plasma 6.5 now can switch to a different night. And you can get this toggle switch right up here. But you can also use mobile themes are shown on the system settings, quick settings page, and turn on automatic day from there. You can also choose to always dark green sensors that include both. So you can see here based on whether the coloring is dark or light based on the day and night cycle. For those privy to dark mode, this all is a great improvement, as that was the focus for this week's KDE 6.5. It's always fun to watch how KDE is just polishing users. We'll keep following things, but this is a massive improvement as people have been longingly requesting this feature, and it's finally been put into KDE. Now let's talk about the Steam client on Linux as it brings some notable improvements. The biggest one is actually scaling under Xwayland. A few things fixed here, including fixing a crash on Linux if 32-bit GTK3 libraries are installed. The general here is added a customization tab to game properties. We have the store menu fixed blur issue for users with GPU acceleration turned on. Store menu top genres should now be more relevant and dynamic. Store menu added a store home link. Now, the one fixed a bug that sometimes causes chat tabs to not contain the name or the avatar of a chat participant in the fixed context menus showing empty spaces at some UI scales. But that's not the important part. The big deal here is on Linux, they fixed the Steam UI scale not updating with the system API changes in Xwayland, and also fixed a case where Steam would freeze and fail to recover after a process crash. And this is awesome, as we've had long-standing scaling issues with Steam on Wayland and Xwayland, and now we're getting an improved experience with high DPI Linux setups. This is awesome as we see a reinforcement of Valve's commitment to giving us a first-class Linux gaming experience. I love to see them focusing on Linux a little bit here, so it's exciting to read about this new Steam client beta. And speaking about the Steam client beta, let's talk about the Steam hardware and software survey for July 2025, as this just dropped. Linux is about to hit the 3% market share for operating systems when it comes to gaming, which now may mark the largest number of Linux users ever in the gaming market share here on Steam, at least when it comes to these surveys. But we can see here, Linux is at the 2.89, let's just give it 2.9% of all gaming on Steam. But of course, Windows is still on top. But you can see significant gains and losses here, as about 0.44, let's just call it 0.5%, have moved over to either OS X or Linux. And really, Linux taking on a majority of that share, increasing by 0.5% this month. This hopefully is signaling a small momentum for real-world adoption when it comes to gaming Linux. Things like the Steam Deck have definitely, but also Steam and Valve themselves have really encouraged people to go over to Linux by improving game compatibility and focusing on things like performance, as we saw in the last segment. Hopefully one day we get to that 10% mark, which would be a massive deal, as eventually we could even see a snowball effect. Let me know if you're using Linux to game. As we move on to the Wayback 0.2 release, we're going to be talking about this. But before we do, if you're ready to level up your Linux experience today, check out my checklist, cheat sheet, and my map, all available at savvynick.com. You can download those today. And Wayback 0.2 is getting early bug fixes here, including things like fixing looping issues with session launch, adding version information to command outputs, improving child processes and handling without relying on signal terminate, and available now in the Gen 2 Guru and Nix packages. For some of you who are not quite familiar with the Wayback project, this is a project that is meant to help legacy X11 applications run on a pure Wayland environment, which is, of course, crucial for the long-term transition over from X11 to Wayland. It's a project that aims to provide a cleaner alternative to X Wayland, hopefully with better integration of resource handling. It's a fairly new project, as it just had released on release, and now we're already on point 2 release. It's all in alpha, as the first preview release was just last month as well. Really in replacement for XOR, powered by Wayland. It's going to support X11s inside of its minimal compositor. This is going to help users and distros maintain legacy X setups. This is more for distributions than users, actually. Because if it's a success, Linux systems can now carrying outdated X or code. We'll continue to follow this. A lot of remaining work with some massive. In another news, ext4 is seeing a major scalability boost. Block allocation and scalability, as with systems that have many CPU cores. ext4 block allocation path add bottlenecks, especially when it current operations like allocate, which caused performance degradation. Some of the submitted redesigned how ext4 handles allocation of metadata. The results are significant speed, so creating, serving, and using file blocks, especially when it comes to high concurrency or places where many CPU cores are being used, which is all exciting. It's a major improvement that unlocks performance on modern hardware by scaling ext4 better across many cores. And that's not all. I talk about some of the large folio work that's been done on ext4. I'm going to put a link below. You can check that video out. It's very interesting. And I go way ext4 changes that are occurring. As they continue to work on these large folios, I'm super excited to see what ext4 is going to users on Linux kernel version 6.18. As I continue to follow through many patches daily to improve our experience on Linux. And that's about it. If you're interested in more video, to go down and subscribe below. Also, smash that like button back up. Let me know what you think Linux news in the comments section below. I'd love to hear from you. Catch me in a great community on Discord, and I'll catch you in another video. Thanks for watching. I'm back.
Wow, that was fun. $2 for this bottle of water. I can't believe I did that. I spent $200 on this. Anyway, we have a lot of options right now, more than I've ever seen in one room in my entire life. That's because I'm currently on a quest to all of this, all these different brands and their branding and their messages and their advertisements. I'm going to be doing a bunch of blogs to see if I can tell the difference between cheap versus expensive water. And then a deep dive on the water. It's what's actually inside this. Where does it come from? How is it treated? Are any of these health claims legitimate? And who are the companies who are selling it to us, making $350 billion annually in the global bottled water industry? Can we trust them? Oh, and what's Jennifer Aniston doing, rolling out of bed like this, deer in the headlights, clutching a bottle of smart water? And most importantly, is the stuff inside of this bottle for basically out of my tap? Is it healthier or purer in any way? Because it is a lot more expensive. I could refill this bottle of Fiji water for the next years and it was the same as this one bottle. Bottled water is insanely more expensive than tap. And I want to figure out what we're paying for. Speaking of microscope, looking inside to see what's going on with tap.
The gap between what is legal and what.
Water is the most important substance on Earth, which is why me and a bunch of creators are trying to raise people who have access to clean drinking water get access. It's part of this with a reputable and vetted organization. So that taste test. First up, this. Here goes B. Okay. I like that one the most, but they all just taste like water. All right, my winner for this one is C. What was it? No way. Oh God. Oh, this is truly blind, by the way. This is a blind taste test. Totally unprimed. We did all this work behind the scenes to make sure that, like, I don't know which one it is. And I immediately was like, oh, that one. That is amazing. Okay, we'll do another one.
Putting water into a bottle is a profoundly symbolic act. You're taking this thing that is a universal human need, you could argue is a universal human right. Everyone should have access to clean, fresh water. And you're commercializing it, you're commodifying that.
At the core of this story is the strange reality here in the modern economy where we interact with corporations all the time and we want to trust them, but we don't totally know if we can, because sometimes in this case, they are. I'm talking about this right now. This is what happens every day when we're on the internet. Information is being sold on an open market. That is, in the modern age, your name, your birthday, your address, what you do on the internet, what you like, where you live, all of it is valuable so that people can market things to you or sell that data somewhere else. I'm telling you about this because Incogni is the sponsor of today's video. I'm a big fan. $20. A couple years ago, actually, to start sponsoring videos. And that is Incogni. What I did is I signed up and I gave them permission to go out, and we are unwittingly just our way of saying, look, we did it. We found a way to make the most important substance on earth clean and free, abundant to everyone. Let's put it in the middle of our cities to celebrate these steps. They became a central symbol of rights movement, access to these water fountains. They were a point of celebration. But then we went through a phase here in individualistic America where we cut back on public infrastructure, and water fountains fell prey to this. Pair that with a few contempt breaks at public water fountains. By the 19th, it turned from celebrated public offering to ugly but functional requirement for schools and offices. With my mom, like many parents, warning me that this part of the water fountain was actually a death trap. And then there was the tap, the stuff we have in our home. There were a few major, highly publicized cases of contamination in people's tap water in America. And this added to an increase of skepticism, lack of faith in our public water infrastructure. People were losing faith. But wait, let's just clear something up right here and now. Is our drink here in America kind of an important question? Yes, for most of us, it is totally safe. There's some geographical variations in what safe means, and I will get to that. But every expert I talked to said American tap water is among the most tested.
What part of America? Are you talking Argentina? Are you talking Chile? America.
Obviously, as a water sommelier, I really love the opportunity to taste waters from all over the world, but mostly I try to advocate for having fresh, clean tap water available to everybody and drink that mostly myself.
Yes, it's safe, but what matters is what people think. And into the 1990s, people really started to lose faith in the tap. And public water fountains really started to disappear. Here's what's so annoying is that I'm at the airport. I got this empty, and I can't find a water fountain anywhere. Everywhere I look, but no water fountain. So it's like, even if I wanted to, there's just not infrastructure for it. It happened in the old days when water fountains were right at the center of everything. It's annoying. So here come the corporations. It's the 1990s, and we're drinking fewer sugary drinks. That's good. And the companies who make those sugary drinks see an opportunity. They already have big facilities where they bottle stuff and ship it all around the country. And they're now getting in trouble and under a lot of scrutiny for how much sugar they're pumping into the economy. Pepsi launches their brand Aquafina. Coke launches Dasani a few years later for all of life's thirst-worthy moments. Nestle, who now is owned by another company, but kind of also got into the bottled water. bottled water had existed before they could invent this stuff, but it was kind of niche health food stores. It was very esoteric. Now it was going mainstream. And we're using a clever little trick.
A lot of times bottled water.
Taking a bunch of tap water, running it through some extra filtration, and selling it for 2,500 times the cost. Seriously, 2,000. Even if you took away the price of the bottle and the cap and all of it, all the production costs, it's still around 2,000 times more. And we bought it. Bottled water started to surge. And today there's $352 billion worth of bottled water that is sold in 500 billion plastic bottles. More plastic bottles than you and I can ever imagine. A few years ago, Reuters did a great 3D visualization of this. The moment you land on this page, the bottles start falling, starting to count up the used since you opened the page. Kind of anxiety inducing. Because you have a day and then in an entire year. I mean, for now, I'm going to try to stay focused on the central question to this video, which is, why do we pay a price that's 2,000 times greater for this than this tab?
How about first?
Let's do
Let's go.
round two. What do we got here? I guess we've got some saltine crackers. People who taste water. It's a whole thing during the story. And these crackers are how they cleanse their water taste. Humans are interesting creatures. Here we go. First up, we've got this. Tastes like.
Wait, dude.
Okay. Maybe a little more minerally. I don't know.
Electrolytes.
See the most. What is it? This is the hot job Sonic tap water. It's been repackaged and sold to me for 2,000 times the price. It's the same. If I'm just being honest, all this is there's no noticeable difference for me. But hey, let's keep going.
Let's go, fucking.
Okay, so my the big greedy corporations tricked us all into buying. No, actually, a lot of us buy bottled water because it's convenient. We want to drink more of this than sugary drinks. It's really easy to put it in our car or whatever. It's easy to throw away. A disposable plastic bottle. A lot of us convenience-minded people have been more and more here. That's at least what the market research says. But that doesn't mean there aren't shenanigans going on here. And there's billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars to be made in an industry. The corporations start to get a little bit misleading. That's what I want to shine a light on next. To go into the bottle and really tell you what's going on here. To go into the stories that these bottled water companies tell us, and if any of them are true. First up, let's look at this. So let me just super clarify that despite all of these images and beautiful stories, most bottled water that is consumed in America, over 60%, is bottled tap water. It's tap water that's gone through some extra filtration and purification. Is put a bottle and sold to for 2,000. Dasani, Aquafina. This secret got out in 2004 when these guys were trying to get into the UK. They launched their big campaign of Dasani, and then people found out that it was just filtered city water repackaged. And then someone tested the water, and they found that legal amounts of cancer-causing contaminants in this water, and the ruse was up. Not only was it tap water, recall hundreds of thousands of bottles.
Especially because of marketing around bottled water that's significantly bigger than tap water. And then in most
are a consumer of bottled water because it's that is not surprising or worrisome. But don't be deceived that this stuff is coming from anywhere but the tap. What's spring water. Natural spring water. It sounds delicious, right? It comes from a spring, just groundwater, untouched. There is a place called Poland Spring. It's up in Maine. And it was a wonderful spring for a few years until this company sucked it dry like decades ago. And now they get their water not from Poland Spring, which has been sucked dry by them, but from a bunch of other groundwater that they classify as a spring. People who are suing them say this isn't a spring. They
Because it's not summer, it's in a spring.
Pit collecting groundwater that then has to be
We don't do winter, it's in a spring.
To make it drinkable. Anyway, there's been a bunch of lawsuits. You can read about it in our citations.
It was a spring, Judge.
Perfectly to
It was a spring, we don't like.
this storytelling.
It was just after
is immaculate.
winter.
And it is a true story.
Immaculate
Fiji water
concession.
says that it is from the island of Fiji, that it is natural artisan water. It has natural electrolytes.
Ooh, it's
and it's a smarter
electrolytes.
choice. As tropical rain slowly filters through volcanic rocks, it gathers electrolytes and
Oh,
minerals. It
minerals.
gives Fiji water its signature soft, smooth mouthfeel. How smart is that? They call themselves Earth's finest water,
Use water.
untouched by man until you open the bottle. Okay, so what's the deal here? This water does come from an aquifer on an island in the country of Fiji, which is a South Pacific island that is very far away from any other country. Water is their just export, and the company that caused all kinds of trouble. It's a big thing that, like, I almost went to because I can make a whole video about Fiji water and the drama with the Fiji government. This precious aquifer water goes into the bottle right here on the island of Fiji and then gets put on a ship and shipped thousands and thousands of kilometers. Like, it's 8,000 kilometers to the port of LA.
1,000 kilometers.
And the whole idea is that this water is different. It's special. It comes from this volcanic aquifer and therefore is extra special. And they really wanted you to think that in the early days when they came out with this ad campaign. The label says Fiji because it's not bottled in Cleveland. Super snarky. But then watch what happens. The City of Cleveland Water Authority fires back by taking some of this Fiji water and running a bunch of tests on them.
Take me outside.
Okay,
They have to run
yeah.
100 tests a day or something on the water to make sure
That
it's
was
safe.
a good one.
They did that on Fiji water and found that it had a significant amount of arsenic, which is like a heavy metal that much and is not good. It comes naturally in a lot of water, but you don't want. Fiji had less than the legal limit, but they still had a presence. And then they come out and say, our water in Cleveland, the tap water that you just feel back,
Cleveland.
basically has zero arsenic. So
Cleveland.
much for your books.
Irony.
Not pick on Cleveland. All of this for water that, yes, tells a good story and has beautiful images, but ultimately costs way more, thousands of times more than the tap. And requires a lot of energy to get onto store. Okay, but does it taste better? Let's find out. All right, here we go, round 3. Okay. Definitely more minerals.
Thirsty, thirsty.
Kind of rusty, or like mineral.
Rusty, that's the word I was looking
for some reason. I guess I'm into B. What is it? Way! I swear to the Lord above, this is an actual experiment. And I actually
No way.
tastes nicer. And
The nicer.
all right, let's keep going.
You know,
Okay, now let's talk about health claims. Because more and more, you see water that isn't. It claims to like be better for you, like it's ionized. Alkaline water these days. Alkaline is naturally alkaline. Alkaline just means that the pH high. It's not acidic. The lower the number, the more acidic. Perfect.
More than 7. 7 is
Alkaline,
neutral.
Ionized sport water. pH of 9. Electrolyte formula. It's built for all-day hydration.
Oh, well, I didn't know that.
These waters being more than. I'm going to go through each of the claims real quick. I'll put all of the. Let's just start with one claim that actually has some merit. When we drink water, comes minerals in it. Minerals like calcium and magnesium for our bones, good for our heart. They help our body function better. So some studies link mineral water with better. A lot of your tap is hard or has minerals in it, and you're getting minerals from that you eat. If you're somebody who wants to include more minerals in your life, mineral water, whether it's added in, like a lot of this from a natural spring that has a bunch of minerals, that's great. That's actually scientifically good. People also use minerals for taste to affect what your water tastes like. So minerals, they're legit. They've always been a part of water. And what about this word alkaline? Sentia. Number one ionized alkaline water. Alkaline theory and kind of inference behind this claim is that your body needs to retain a certain alkalinity. It can't be too.
Oh my God, I'm a genius.
You will have, as some say, balance. Is this really difference? I wish it did. It does not. Well, alkaline water is not better than just plain water. Cleveland Clinic claims it is marketing hype. And off with a third, the British Journal top it includes that the claim of alkaline or ionized water having positive health effects have a flimsy rationale and no rigorous experimental support. Okay, but what about electrolytes? Electrolytes is a word we've been hearing since the 90s when it comes to like hydration. And indeed, it is. Electrolytes are minerals like salt that hold on to water. And when you are sweating a lot, they do indeed help you finish your hydration level quicker. Why they're like the special ingredient in sports drinks is that most of us aren't sweating like these guys, super sweaty, like NFL players who are just like sweating, like they are sweating all the time to replenish way faster. I go on a jog once a day or something, and I sweat. I don't need a ton of electrolytes to replenish. I have the right to do it. So it turns out that infused water doesn't confer any extra special benefits than the hydration of just regular water, including the water from the tap out of my old whiskey bottle. Big water, my friend. And that is the upshot of all of this. All of this water that has been story told and packaged to us is really not that much different than this stuff that came out of my tap. Now, again, there's some nuance depending on where you live. That might not be the case, but for 90% of Americans, you're not getting much else out of this other than convenience.
Morning, James.
Well, thank you. That people mistrust type of water that's sold to them with a story and pay $2,000 time the price for it, and that's kind of what's going on with all of this. Let's finish this video by talking about tap water. Finally, is your tap water? I've said a million times that yes, it is, and now I'm going to throw a little gray area and nuance at you, and you will be potentially unsatisfied with the answer, as I am unsatisfied with the answer. But I promise it will all make sense. I'm going to empower you with knowledge. In the United States, over 90% of the municipal water sources, community-based water treatment, comes out of the tap is clean, which is amazing. The stuff that comes out of the hose and the shower and goes into the abundant, clean water. Okay, but watch what happens when I go to this website, environmental working. Type your zip code, not zip code, you will see a bunch of data about your tap water. All of this represents the different contaminants that are in your water. It's basically impossible to have water that has zero trace contaminants. But this group, this environmental working, yes, this stuff is legal, but it's not ideal. We could do better. We could have a better water system that would not have this much arsenic, 0.109 parts per billion. They want us to have 0.004. The government is okay with us having 10. And you can see that I'm like 1%. So well below the limit, but EWG says that we can do that.
Not a yes to your state. You're not figuring out how high you are. That does matter. The risk.
See, this is kind of answer. Like, yes, the water in America is super clean and 90%. According to the, there's still a way for this to go. Is that this will only happen. We'll only get to this like near perfect water if all of us are bought in to having a better water system. Instead, we spend thousands of times more on this stuff, this corporate storytelling about health claims and that are often overblown, sometimes totally money in buying their bottles instead of demanding better tap water. So I will be walking with sort of a deeper appreciation for the miracle of abundant, clean drinking water. I will be walking with skepticism towards all of these claims of alkalinity, minerality, and increased performance. And I think ultimately I will be feeling a deep sense of gratitude at the fact that I even have access to a lot of people in this world who do not have the access to water. Meet a bunch of other creators are ways awareness and money to bring clean drinking water to communities that don't have it. We're trying to raise $40 million, and luckily the biggest creators are doing this as well. So I think we can actually, but it's going to take a huge. We have between now and the end of the month, and all of that money will go to WaterAid, which is a reputable, vetted, provides clean water access to people who don't have it. So this is a way to have a little bit of money go a really long way. Please consider donating to. Thank you for watching the show, and I will see you next month.
Now I feel like throwing up, but hi there, everyone. I'm Sam. I'm usually an iOS user, but today I thought I'd try out Android, see what amazing features it has that iPhones will get. So the first thing you'll notice after buying is some strange pieces of paper sticking at the back. Now, this is called Get Enough. So that's nice. The next thing you'll notice is they've managed to shrink down the dynamic island into more dynamic dots. Unfortunately, though, it doesn't appear as though this version does anything. Also, this model doesn't appear to work with Face ID, whether I look at it directly or inspect it. And so, some Androids still require to continue to open, which is great if you hit it correctly on. If you miss it, though, it'll blind you right in the face. Okay, welcome to the home screen of Android. Now, by default, it won't look too dissimilar from iOS, but you can make it look pretty freaky with things called launches. That'll give you an alphabetical list, a circle, or a PlayStation 3 menu. Or you can go with the big a Microsoft phone, maybe black. Look at this iOS. Yes, please. Now, as an Apple user, the same way I like me. Simple. So, a basic launcher that does do something weird in that it lets you move your icons and resize widgets on the fly, which is impressive because they invented that. So, Android moves fast. Android is spyware designed by Google Buttercup. It goes directly to the President of the United States. Whereas with an iPhone, all your data is kept safely inside Tim Cook's bosoms. And what happens on your iPhone stays in his bosoms. And that's a promise. But when you are outside of Tim, you do get a little bit of jazz installing apps from outside of the official app store. The only problem is most of those apps look like us. And that's because, you see, developers tend to focus more on iOS apps. One, because there's only so many iPhones they have to optimize for. And because, as rumor goes, iPhone users have more money than Android users. But that's actually a bit of a misconception by the iPhone. It's about evil. That's serious package. All right, now even Island is pretty versatile because the core of it is open source. People can run it on TVs, fridges, and toilets. And even while running on a toilet, you can probably do things the iPhone can't, like multiple user accounts, for notifications and control. Fold in half, fold again, split screen, or even just a back button. But of course, none of that really matters because I already own another Apple device, which means I'm locked in for life. Please send help. And that's Android according to an iPhone user. It comes in about 100 different styles, and only 3 of them are good. They say that Apple users only buy things because the Apple logo is on it. Well, people only buy Android because of the G. Checking out Uranus. Checking out Uranus. Wow, I've never seen it from this angle before. You know, artificial intelligence is almost as good as artificial flavor. Well, actually, I mean, it's as good as artificial sweetness. No, that's not great either. Artificial grass? Well, I'm sure there's something good that's artificial. Oh, hi there. I'm Sam Tucker from Apple. And you know, with all the buzz going around about Apple intelligence and its features, you're probably wondering how you live without it, even though it's not technically out right now. Not that you can tell from our marketing, though. False advertising. Well, today I'm going to take you step by step in developing your own Apple
Thank you, Jim. Have a good day.
Right. Tim Cook to access intelligence without even touching. Come on, try to find an image of him actually touching an Apple computer. There aren't many. He's a real hands-off kind of guy. And when he actually does touch one, he wears protection. Anyway, let's climb the ladder of enlightenment until we become TC level 16, Apple Intelligence. The first power we have to master is visual intelligence. See, with the iPhone 16, you're able to point your restaurant and take a snap to menu items available at that establishment. But how are we able to achieve this feat with a $8 iPhone? Well, it's not easy. Harnessing the power of our eyes, we can see that the menu is to our feet. We can walk towards it. IQ has gone up. Next level, able to identify this. As attached to that dog will be a person. What breed of dog it is. If it's she'll know. And if it's not her dog, well, then it can be your dog. Quick, fast. Next level, writing tools. Now, how are you able to summarize your work emails without the use of a private cloud computing platform? Easy. The trick is to just read the email through a feature called Getting Paid to Do Your Job. See, by doing the job that you're getting paid for, you'll be able to increase your intelligence and increase your bank account by not spending $1,000 on a computer to read your emails for you. Next level. What if you don't have it and you need a little help writing the covers of it? Well, again, for this, we can use our own brain and fingers in order to write our own emails. Because if you can't write an email, maybe you don't deserve this job, especially if you work in the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication. Come on, guys. If you're a journalist, I know you have the heart of a robot. It doesn't mean you need the mind of one too. What if I want to rewrite an email to my friends in the form of a poem? Easy. Don't write your friends an email in the form of a poem, or else you won't have any friends. How does he know that? A lot of people. Let's move on to images. With Apple Intelligence, there's the image playground, where you can input multiple words and the AI will generate an image that combines them. Now, there are two ways to achieve this yourself without reactivating nuclear power plants across the world. The first would be to use your imagination to just imagine what a cat chef would look like. But I'll admit, imagination can be hard for some people. And if the situation is simply unimaginable, like a dinner in Brooklyn, well, in that case, just take these words and put them into a Google box. You'll find something close enough. And this method can also be used to find the other wacky images that Apple has, like a surfboard, a building, and I feel like my mind is about to explode. Let's do these last levels rapid fire. How will I find out weather without Apple Intelligence? Well, just open the weather app. Set an alarm without typing it out letter by letter. Just tap here. If AI doesn't record and transcribe what I talked about, people I know what we talked about. Easy to remember the call. There at the time. What about generate? Well, here's a news flash. We don't need any more emojis. We peaked at pregnant man. For everything else, just use ChatGPT, like Apple does. Congratulations. You now have organic intelligence. Well done. With this power, you can connect with other OIs or scroll on your phone. The choice is yours. And you've chosen to well, I tried. Thanks for watching, everyone. And please click the like button and subscribe. So I really think your Apple Intelligence people like these fun tech parodies. And
my name is Chris from Australia, and just today, Australia bought security laws to allow America to export beef. We've dropped the biosecurity laws that were in place since 2003. I don't like this. To be frank, I want you guys to leave your thoughts down below in the comments what you think about Australia's biosecurity laws being dropped so American beef can come into Australia. So I'm just going to run through what I know about it and then let you guys make up your own decision and leave your thoughts down. First thing to clear up, first and foremost, is importing beef from America is not going to give our cattle mad cow disease over here. Okay, so you can't import the meat across and somehow cows out in the field catch it. Okay, it doesn't work that way, and that's not a risk that's on the table. And second thing is that it's not just beef from the US. Okay, it's beef that's processed in the US that can be exported out to Australia. So this cattle raised in America, it's cattle raised in Canada, but then moved into and processed in America before getting shipped out to Australia. When we shut down in 2003, it was from outbreaks of mad cow disease. Well, you know what? We don't want any risk of this coming into our country. Any risk at all to the industry. In 2003, shut it down. We closed borders to US beef. And it's not like it's disappeared. The most recent mad cow disease incident in America was only 2 years ago. So it's not a relic of the disease happening in America. So when we come back to our cattle represents 52,000 beef producers. They say that beef in Australia, when we grow the cattle, we raise the cattle, slaughter the cattle, the beef at the end product, it's about 50 cents a kilogram cheaper cheaper than what it is from America. So making it cheaper. So Australian beef is cheaper for a high-grade product. For the US beef is not Australia. It is competitive over in America because we're a higher and we're cheaper than what the Americans can make it for. As a result, 2024, the US imported 390 tons of beef from Australia. And a big reason for that, America is a much lower grade. It's way too fatty. It's so fatty. It can't hold together. There's too much gristle in there. That is all the crap. So what they do is they import beef from much higher quality, and they mix in our burger patties hold food glue. If they just use beef only, all the gristle, all the fat in it, they're going to use. It's not even considered food at the end. That's how bad it is. So if American beef is so gristly, so fatty that it can't even hold a burger patty together, it's more expensive than the beef that we. Why would we want it? American beef is dog food grade quality. But even still, if Australian beef is cheaper than the American beef, why not treat your dog and give them Australian beef? It'd be much better meat for them to eat than that gristly shit from America. Our biosecurity for our beef in Australia, it's important because even though it's cheaper than what it is in the over here, it's a higher grade beef. Security measures were trusted that the quality of product is going to be great. And this all came back from, remember when Trump was talking about tariffs and he said, 10% tariff for Australia. Then he referenced across to Australian beef saying that we can export it to them. Big issue about it all. Well, Trump didn't just lobbying groups over in America. The American Meat Institute has been pushing for a long time to export US beef into Australia. They drew a comparison saying, well, Australians are importing a lot of pork products, cured hams and all that kind of stuff, or little picnic hams, been importing a lot of that stuff through, and that hasn't been an issue. So they wanted to get beef on that, and they have been lobbying in Washington for a very long time, paying politicians, paying donations to their campaign, saying, hey, you'll get in if here's a whole shitload of money. I want you to chase down being able to export beef to Australia. They've paid enough, they've got to the right people, they've got all the way to start pushing that concept and that narrative out. And the narrative is biosecurity on beef to the US. They want us to get rid of it. And we've removed it because a bunch of American lobbyists aside years to do that. What it allows Americans to do is they get to put their beef on the grade quality biosecurity-wise as Australia. Say, well, if we can export to Australia, it's good enough for Australia because Australians have some of the biosecurity laws built around their beef. So therefore, we're now on the that's what they've done. And they've been successful doing it because they're all over. And you didn't vote for this. Australians did not vote for this. Australians vote favourably for beef to be imported from America and Mexico. It's processed and exported to Australia, and the quality, the beef grade quality is super fatty. It's a lower quality than what you get from Coles and Woolies, and guess what? It's going to be more for that. You would not vote favorably for that. Just this was not on any campaigning, not on anything that coming through. But we do have the people from the departments. They've been working for 5 years. Lobbyists from America have across onto the Australian government departments for at least 5 to 10 years. So we're working on it, we trust them, we're doing all this kind of stuff. For this election, we didn't vote for it. The last election, we had this once every 10 years. So what are our government departments doing here for Australian people? And instead, now we have a this meeting with the president of America, he's just rolling back all of our biosecurity laws to try and appease him like some cut. Last Australian citizens did not vote for this. We can still vote with our wallets. So next time you check where it's from, or if it's supported America, don't buy it. Plus, who starts trying to use American beef? Well, ditch it. Don't buy it. Vote. At the end of the day, if no one buys this fatty, gristly, more shit, well, they'll stop exporting it over here. Okay? And we'll go on our cheaper, higher grade iron farming. What are your thoughts? How did it make you feel when you heard that Australia's security laws to America to allow them to censor an inferior product? How did it make you feel? What are your thoughts about it? Leave it down below in the comments, and I'll see you in the next.
You all. Oh, I'm there. I'm Sam. I've been for a while now. Whether it was assignments on my plastic MacBook that technically has more ports than my current MacBook Pro does. And one of those was a CD. Or editing one of my first videos on the school's Emacs. That was around 20 years ago now. Oh, I'm aging. Anyway, today I'd like to go through the top 5 Apple products that I wish they would make again. But that they most certainly won't. Starting the time capsule. The time capsule was a wireless router with inbuilt storage that made it easy to back up your computer or multiple computers to the one device. It was simple to use and in typical app with at least one port. And how handy would that device wirelessly back up your iPhones and your iPads? But alas, because then they couldn't charge you every. Why buy your own iCloud device just once? Storage forever. Yay, profit. We have the Apple Cinema Display. The Cinema Display was Apple's standalone monitor. That was basically an iMac with the Mac part taken out. And so, if you can believe it, it was actually cheaper than an iMac was at the time. Not so anymore, as Apple doesn't have any display option anymore that's cheaper than a display plus a computer. Heck, you're lucky that the stand is cheaper than the computer. Number 3 on the list is a bit of a curveball. It's iWeb. Yeah, if you remember, the software that used to come with iLife that let you build your own simple website. But it did come with some pretty sophisticated features, such as moving text around and rotating images, which is harder to do on modern site builders than it should be. And since you're probably paying for iCloud anyway, imagine using that to have your own website instead of paying for separate hosting. But alas, Apple will never bring this back again because, well, I guess there's a lot of web-based competition now, including free ones that break all the time. Thanks, WordPress. Number 2 is actually 5 things I'm just going to quickly mention, such as the free cleaning cloth you used to get with iPhones and MacBooks. That's right, it used to come in the box, whereas now you have to get a screen the price of a car to get them to throw one in. $4 for one. Next is not because they don't anymore, just because they look so cool. Spool. Computer. How gorgeous is that? I want one. The Mighty Mouse was a scroll ball, which would be super handy for sideways scrolling my timeline. But guess what? So is this. Would be nice. Now they probably will end up. To upgrade the its rear end though, because now not your back. The number 1 thing that Apple should bring is the 12-inch MacBook. It was the first MacBook to have a trackpad that just clicks. It was the come with USB Type-C the first with a butterfly keyboard. All right,
Keyboard. Any computer you can buy today is a new Mac.
so meticulously designed that a tiered battery system that was very in fact, it's so stunning that when my wife went to work that she remembers the most is the but made
Going to the airport.
Intel chip first band. However,
It's international, right? We'll be there.
cool.
Let me know, India.
They never will.
Because it's too hot.
And the keyboard plays the cost more than and those are the products that I think Apple should make. Which products would you like to see? Let me know in the comments below, and maybe Apple see the feedback because they certainly don't want to see it on their own. Everyone, thanks for watching the video. Make sure to subscribe. Peace.
$10. Buy coffee. Let's buy a coffee. $10, $10. Okay. The new millionaire. $10. $7.50. A few Moments later. Later. Alligator. Dude, what the fuck? Staying in traffic. What are you doing going on the fast line? You crazy. People who never drive in their life giving opinions on the internet. Why not? Why not? Why not? Oh, the internet. What the internet have to say? The next.
Not at all what I expected. Turns out President Andre Curtis, president in Rick and Morty, is getting his own series on Adult Swim. Maybe not who I would have gone with, but let's talk about it. Okay, so this new Rick and Morty spinoff is simply titled President Curtis, which I guess makes sense. The other shows just names Rick and Morty, so they're calling it President Curtis. President Curtis is also obviously David, who will be returning to the role for the spinoff series, is probably the biggest win in the win column for this spinoff. Keith David is a legend, one of the greatest voices in the industry, in all of voiceover. When he's the a strange one you're used to. I don't know what that means, but see, maybe it's just an allusion to the sort of like deep state type of stuff we might explore here. So the series is co-created by Harmon and James Siciliano. So Keith David is reprising his role, and he's going to be joined by Brooklyn Nine-Nine's Stephanie Beatrice, who also does a lot of other voiceover. She's in BoJack Season 5. She's a main character in Hazbin Hotel. She's no stranger to voiceover. And then also Community's Jim Rash, who is one of my favorite comedic actors out there. I think he's like deeply underrated, one of the funniest guys to ever do it, who actually worked with Keith David on the final season of Community. So here is the logline / synopsis for the series. President Curtis follows the commander-in-chief and his eccentric staff as they tackle the kind of crises that Rick Sanchez could never be bothered with, from interdimensional diplomacy to paranormal investigations and unexplained phenomena. So a lot of people are pointing out that this kind of sounds like Inside Job. And it does. That's true. They're kind of filling the gap that Inside Job left after it was canceled by Netflix, which is strange. I would just rather have more Inside Job personally. I feel like that show at least had characters that I really cared about, and they had really interesting dynamics, and it was kind of a fun world. This, I hope they find a way to differentiate this from Rick and Morty. I do like the angle that it's less kind of insane than Rick and Morty. It's more X-Files than it is, like interdimensional. It could be a fun sort of procedural type Rick and Morty show that's dealing with the more, domestic supernatural phenomena. This is, I guess, technically the second Rick and Morty spinoff, if you want to include the Vindicators miniseries on YouTube, which I always forget about, so I'm sure many of you will count that one. The Adult Swim president, Michael O, had this to say about the show. This is a series we would have greenlit even if it didn't have anything at all to do with Rick and Morty. President Andre Curtis is just that good of character. The rest of the world, the team is fleshed out as super fun. Can't wait for you to see it. Obviously, it's his job to say this kind of stuff, but I do hope this is true. Like, that is exactly what I hope to see from the show. I hope it really stands on its connections to Rick and Morty. Like, it might be connections to the other show, but I'd rather get like a fun deep state X-Files type procedural comedy than something that's just like, all right, when are we waiting for the next reference to something Rick and Morty related? Keith David was asked what the emotional core of the show was, and he said he really is a good person and that he has values. And he wants to make sure that the people around him stay true to that or get back to that. It's pretty basic, but that's what you want. You want to have a likable main character, which I would say maybe Rick and Morty struggles with, but I hope that's true. I will say, I feel like they probably should have made a Rick and Morty spinoff 5 or 6 years ago. This feels a little late in the run.
as interest kind of wanes in Rick and Morty in general, for them to be introducing a spinoff, I feel like this maybe would have really popped off after season 4 or 5. It's not to say that it can't work, and it's not to say that it might not be good. This could be like the American Dad to Rick and Morty's Family Guy, where it's not as popular, but the people who watch it are like, I actually think it's like low-key kind of better. Who knows? It could be that one. I would not have chosen President Curtis as the main character, but I do understand the premise being what they're going for here with the sort of X-Files procedural comedy inside job type thing. And also I totally understand being like, oh, can we get Keith David to be the main character of our show? Let's probably do that. We should probably get Keith David. That totally tracks. Like, that all makes a lot of sense. It still just kind of feels a little late in the Rick and Morty run for this to be the movie. I feel like 5 years ago, if they announced a Rick and Morty movie, that shit would have been the craziest, biggest deal in the world. A Rick and Morty movie would have probably made bank. And now I cannot imagine that doing as well. I'm going to go back and forth on this because I am often very plugged into the Twitter of it all and the fandom in the comment sections and the Reddit, like the diehards. A lot of that seems to have dwindled. But the general public does still watch them. Like when Rick and Morty hits HBO Max, that stuff is binged. It's clearly a really popular show. There's a reason that they've continued to renew it through season 12 at this point, and made it a spinoff. It's probably doing really well on streaming, and it probably is a really popular show to just general audiences. But I do feel like the perception of the show has pendulum swung pretty negatively in the last few years. I think this latest season, season 8, has been very good. Actually, 7 and 8. I thought 7 and 8 were two of the best seasons in a very long time. And I've had a little bit more interest the last couple of years, not seeing as much interest from fans. I also think fans don't know the show is back right now. I mean, some do, but like, it feels like the show is not doing next day streaming on HBO anymore or on Hulu. And that is a huge detriment to the just marketing. People know the show is back. I even stopped talking about the new season only because Turner was on my ass about copyright, which was annoying because A, it's fair use, it's legal, they're in the legal wrong there, and B, I'm doing promotion for your show, guys. I'm giving you free promotion for a show that your fan base doesn't seem to understand is back. I got so many comments every time I made a video. Oh my God, it's back. I had no idea. I'm doing your jobs for you and you're trying to stop me. So, I stopped talking about the show and you can eat my ass. How about that? But this will be good. I'm like excited. I'm excited to see what this character, to see how it differentiates itself from Rick and Morty, be less space to supernatural phenomena. I think that could be fun. And I'm eager to see like writers they've got on this and how many of them in the writer's room and how about doing a Rick and Morty with a season of President Curtis. Are they doing both year alternate? Are they doing Rick and Morty, 1 year President Curtis? Will it go beyond one? Try to run President Curtis concurrently with through the end of Rick and Morty's whatever they have left. They have seasons 9, 10, 11, 12 remaining on their contract. Although, if I'm being honest, I do think Rick and Morty will probably get renewed again. I know interest has dwindled and the perception is that it's not popular and people don't like it anymore. It's still one of the most popular animated shows on TV, and it's probably going to continue. I mean, I would put money on 20 seasons. Is that crazy? With some of the stuff we've seen that runs forever, I feel like Rick and Morty can keep going. Okay, I think that's what we got. President Curtis spinoff. What do you guys think? Are you guys interested in it? I think Keith David of it all gives me hope. I'm like, well, if David is main character, that could be pretty exciting. But, also like don't love his episode. Like, I just don't really care for the rivalry thing and Curtis. Maybe it will be interesting to see him kind of stand aside of that rivalry with Rick. Maybe he'll be a little bit more likable of a character when it's not just during the time. So those are my thoughts. Give me your thoughts in the comments. And Comic-Con coverage coming up about other animated.
Watching John
What the fuck?
Why is it that beautiful women are crazy? People have been asking this question for a really long time. Even back to, he was quoted one time saying, "It's from my own experience that goth bitches are just as hot physically as they are insane mentally." But why? Why is this the case? Not from an anecdotal perspective, but from a psychological perspective. And guess there's a lot of data actually out there to support this is a real thing. And what exactly causes it? And turns out it's extremely interesting, in my opinion. And at the end of this, I have a piece really useful. You see, people who are women are treated insanely different from other people around them. Now, it's funny because if this ever gets brought up, beautiful, they will commonly deny it because every single guy, not every single one of my friends wants to have sex with or be in an intimate relationship with me. So it's not true. It doesn't just extend to romantic relationships. So many different domains. For example, this is that people who are to face higher rejection in not just romantic, but platonic relationships, work relations, and are seen as less capable. People in general want to be friends with more personal experience. Whenever I see a person who just looks better all around, even if I don't plan on having a relationship with them, even if I don't plan on ever seeing them again, if I'm going to interact with that person, I generally treat them better and I'm more willing to do things. That plays into the whole crazy factor. I think this is essential, is their ability to get away with norm violations. For example, if you do something that is not as socially acceptable, but you're attractive, it will be interpreted and seen in a different way. It will seem more positively and less maliciously. Studies have shown this to actually be the case. And more attractive people are even sentenced harshly by judges. Because again, the court system is run people. They see people who are more attractive as less malicious, as less evil. And they see people who are do a violation or break the law or do something that's not reason behind it is often seen as more malicious, as more of a something wrong with that, a mistake. I remember talking to a girl, she was absolutely beautiful. And she was talking about how, no, people don't do that. She was denying it afterwards. She was talking about how she used her beauty to get out of traffic violations so that she wouldn't get tickets, use it to get discounts from people who worked at stores. These people who are much more are just treated better all around. They're also seen. It's as we attribute more positive traits, attractive. Not unless they objectively are that way, but just because towards them. They have better character qualities. They are viewed as smarter. Those things help you a ton. Again, it's not just, hey, I'm attractive and people want to be in more relationships with me. That's just one domain, beauty effects. If people view you in a more positive light and they aren't as inclined to correct behavior, well, let's say you act a little unhinged. It's weird. I used to be that way, but it got trained out of me. It's kind of the beautiful women, but it's not trained out of them as much. People tolerate it much more. And when the people around you don't negative behavior as much, which is what happens all the time, for that crazy unhinged behavior that only gets worse later in life. It's as if you're a child that never got disciplined. Of course, you're later in life. So to sum this up, women who are much more beautiful are more likely to become crazy because people tolerate their behavior and don't even know that they're harmful because they're attractive individuals. A large amount of are interpreted as positive or negative. Whether somebody is attracted to us or sees us as beautiful. This has a personal relationship. If you're in a relationship with somebody, you might interpret something they have a particular laugh. Maybe they have a quirky laugh. If you're that person, I love that laugh. It's going to be seen in a special light. If you're attracted and you
dislike them, that laugh will always drive you because the action itself is not interpreted as positive or negative on its own merit, but whether we are attracted to them. And there's something you can use with it. Take care of your appearance. Looks are important. People will treat you and view you better if you take care. That means even if you aren't that attractive, maybe you're average or less attractive, things you can do, especially as a guy. Take care of your clothing. Get clothing that fits you well. Take care of your beard. Either have it very well. Don't just grow hair on your face. Hair on your face alone, it's not good looking. It needs to be taken care of. And if you have hair on your head, take care of the hair on your head. Get a good hairstyle. Try to treat you differently if you dress differently. As long as you're not ugly, the most important things are in your control. I say this as a guy who's kind of average looking at 5'5", but I take care of my appearance. I put a lot of time in this. And the key principle I've learned is try to stand out, be unique, and wear clothing that makes you look more, this allows you to get attention. And wearing clothing that makes you look more attractive just draws more people to you. It's very important. So logically speaking, if people treat you better and view you better based off of your appearance, whether superficial or not, doesn't matter. People treat you better for it. To improve it, so people view you and treat you better also. You can't change the law. People are always going to be like this. So use it to your advantage. Anyways, that's it for this video. I was wondering, to the people who watch my content regularly, I've been researching some things and I found some very fascinating information. It is extremely controversial and I cannot post it on YouTube, unfortunately. But if I were to start a subscribe start and post content on there that I can't post on here, would you be down to support me? Do you want to exclude? Let me know. Anyways, have a good one and be sure to subscribe. Why is it that beautiful?
This is sure to be a device. First, we've got problems with third-party packages, notably in the AUR, being a pain again for the original app developer. We also have more appearing in the AUR, which I think should be about how you validate those packages on the AUR. People are launching a subscription service for more perks, which I like. But we also have some cool stuff like KDE launching their own distro. And we also have a segue to our sponsor. This video is sponsored by TuxCare. They offer tools and services to simplify the maintenance of your open source stacks through automation and security support, like, for example, their rebootless live patching or their endless lifecycle support, which gives you security fixes for your end-of-life Linux distros, for your open source apps, but also for languages and runtimes. Speaking of which, they of course support Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7 with that endless lifecycle support. Rails 7 is end-of-life, but you have had time to migrate to something new, or maybe you simply put Rails 7 without security fixes for an entire year, obviously not a long-term solution, and so TuxCare offers a simple to gain instant security by moving to their repos, which will provide you vulnerability as many years as you need. It means you stay on your outdated version for years and still maintain compliance. Again,
really cool.
Now, while Linux is increasingly with packaging formats that tend to solve of the hurdle in distributing software on Linux, and we also have user base, it's not always a success story when you bring your app to Linux. For example, DuckStation PS1, a PlayStation 1 emulator, has now pulled their software from the AUR, and they're also considering pulling out of Linux entirely. Now, they provided a package built on the AUR, an official one, because, well, the unofficial ones that existed there weren't all that great. Presumably, the developer must have received a bunch of bug reports for these half-broken packages, which they couldn't do anything about because it was the package creating the problem.
The issue is providing an official version did not stop unofficial packages from being created and published, often in a broken state, which resulted in even more complaints on the bug tracker. The dev stated that they now explicitly forbid packages station, a move that we've seen repeat often lately. Packages can be a pain for some complex applications. We have the bottles situation coming to mind, but also OBS with the Fedora Flatpaks and a bunch of other applications also said, hey, please stop repackaging our apps. We have an official version. It works well. Your unofficial packages are creating a lot of work for us. We don't want it. Alongside this change, the developer says that the next step will be removing Linux support entirely, since it's like 2% of their user base and they don't use it themselves. The code can't apparently be forked legally either, because it is under the Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license, meaning any third-party package is not allowed because it is forks aren't either because it works as well. And this is a complex issue because on the one hand, third-party package where you have to run a specific piece of software. But on the other hand, if the developer has provided a way of running that software, this is what you should use. Unofficial is just create potential problems. If you are savvy enough to not report bugs with that unofficial package to the original developer, or if you're savvy enough to identify what is a packaging problem and what is a software problem, then that's fine. But a lot of users are not capable of that, and so developers of bug reports for stuff that they have no control. And even when they said, this is how you use our software, I don't want using it, they still get pestered about formats control. And this, I think, is really annoying, especially since a lot of apps feel the fact that those third-party packages are not official repo. AUR, as far as I can tell, you have no clue that something is not distributed by the developer. This should be clearly written in the name of the package. It shouldn't be called Google Chrome if it's not officially from Google. It should be called Google Chrome third-party build or Google Chrome unofficial, and the logo should be changed as well. So it is very, very clear for every single user that this is not an official build and that reporting bugs to the original developer on that package makes no sense. Now, still on the AUR, third-party package, another case of malware baking into this repo, a package called Google Access Trojan on user systems, potentially giving attackers access to the files and data, or even install more harmful software. This time should have been pretty suspicious from the get-go. It was uploaded to a user that had just registered, and the install script pointed to itself a bash script running a Python command that downloads an external. It's not even well hidden. The URL is right in the script. The patch moved a few hours after publication, but it shouldn't in the first place. The policy should never be publish first and remove it if it's problematic. It should be do not publish until it's reviewed. I understand that you don't force that, that's fair, but at least don't let anything get straight to the AUR without any review, especially when it's a package for a very well-known application. Now, this is a problem with most app stores or it's because FlatHub and even on Snap, you also have some stuff that goes through. Now, there are guidelines that should absolutely be implemented. Authorize someone who just created their account to publish something without permission, and you probably, if you don't have a manual process for every, you should have at least a check mark or a tag visible to let this app has been vetted by a human. It's not a guarantee everything is safe, but at least you know that this thing should be looked at, because no one even opened the install script or the package to put those kind of things in place, because if not, you're just opening the door to every single type of problem. Now, Hyperland, the Wayland tiling window compositor, launched a paid surveyor in the Linux, especially for window managers. It's called Hyper Perks, and it costs €5 per month plus taxes, and it gives you a few extra developer, some member-only access to the forum, and Q&As with the developer. It also comes with a set of pre-configured config files, so you can start with something that is already well tested, and of course contributing through towards the development of the Hyperland project. Now, if you've been following the channel for a while, you know I'm not a big fan of that. You know I'm not the person behind the Hyperland project, but this is fine. Month is what I'm paying to GNOME and KDE as a donation, without any counterpart apart from having access to their absolutely excellent desktop and applications. I think it's fine. Some might see to the case, you just don't pay it for free because nothing is paywall. The entire feature set, and if you do feel that Hyperland is really good, then you can pay those $5 a month, and you're supporting them. You're also getting some stuff in. I think it's fine. I really don't see a problem with this. Now, the Linux kernel 6.16 was released last week, with big changes to major file systems, notably XFU, but called large atomic writes, meaning to disk, will either fully complete or not complete. So you won't have data being half written in case your computer. X4 also got some improvements in the performance department, which means sequential writes or reads should be up to 37% faster now. There's also USB offload support, meaning embedded devices can maintain their audio streams while the rest of the device goes idle, which means you should be able to save more power on battery because the computer can basically shut everything down except what powers the USB audio. There's support for a bunch of new Intel extensions. There's also easier options to tailor the kernel when building it for a specific CPU and the feature level it has. There are updates to BetterFS and NFS. There's more Rust support. There's a new driver for OpenVPN, which makes this all work a lot better. There's zero-copy transmission from the GPU to the network, potentially useful for data centers, and the usual slew of hardware support as well. There are also updates to bcachefs while we wait to see if it's still part of the kernel in 6.17, or if Torvalds go through with his statement that this will be removed. Now, as always, you get better hardware support and more features for free. That is a nut of Linux, although depending on your maybe not. Now, Samsung just finger to Android because they've now entirely disabled the ability to unlock the bootloader of Samsung phones with their One UI 8 update, which is basically the name they give to their Android version. This means that there is no way of installing a custom operating system on your phone anymore. It was already pretty tricky. You had to use specific hardware support, was very spotty in custom ROMs, but now it's just not a thing anymore at all. In the US, I think this was already completely locked, but this is now also where else. Of course, only the phones that do receive that update will be locked if you already getting that One UI update, so you're okay. But newer Samsung phones will no longer be an option for enthusiasts. Now, I have no idea is legal in the EU or not. I'm pretty sure at some point there was a law or a regulation that you cannot lock down some hardware. I might be entirely wrong. At any rate, it absolutely sucks to have those pretty cool devices not available at all anymore as a choice for custom ROMs. They were never really well supported by most custom ROMs, but when you could get one to run on a Samsung device, it was like the best of both worlds. It's pretty solid hardware with a good operating system. It's sad that it's no longer going to be possible. Now, in another the water is wet moment, the Opera browser filed a complaint against Microsoft, this time in Brazil. They're alleging that Microsoft browser an unfair advantage on Windows, which, Opera had already made similar moves in the EU, taking the European Commission to court over their exemption of Microsoft Edge from the Digital Markets Act, because Edge did not have the threshold of users and market share to be considered a gatekeeper. But now, Opera is doing the same in Brazil, arguing that Edge being pre-installed and the default browser prevents competitors from receiving the attention they could, and also prevents them from competing on their own merits. Microsoft also pushes manufacturers to only pre-install Microsoft Edge and not anything else. Although this isn't resulting in any major market share because Edge barely reached more than 11% worldwide. Opera also says that dark path Microsoft uses to make sure users edge over other browsers. All of these have been very well documented, like opening certain system links in Edge, no matter your default browser, auto-importing tabs from Chrome to make it look like you're using the browser you know, but it's not, and changing that default app for difficult and resetting user preferences as well. Now, all in all, there is zero doubt that, yes, Microsoft is abusing their dominant position with Windows to push Edge and other software. They're doing it with literally every single thing they build. It's Edge, it's Office, it's Outlook, it's Copilot, it's whatever else. They're pushing all of their stuff through Windows because that's the only thing they have that has sizable market share, maybe apart from GitHub, but it doesn't act as a vector to push more Microsoft technologies apart from that dumbass Copilot. But yeah, whether a court will recognize that and act on it, that's entirely different. And generally in the world, no one considers Edge to be a big problem because it has small market share. Nothing else. Now, the EU seems to be giving up on their independence from the United States with a double whammy. Hopefully this doesn't get ratified, but also start to use Google Integrity API for their age verification. Meaning that this application would be entirely to Google and would completely exclude any alternative Android ROM or any alternative app store from being usable. Basically, what the EU is doing is they're adding mandatory age verification for a bunch of stuff, including downloading certain age-gated applications, as the EU would rely on Google's APIs to check whether the phone has been tampered with. Any alternative app store would just not be able to use that age verification app and thus probably be deemed illegal. And so any custom ROM that is de-Googled and doesn't have the Play Store would also be unusable. Now, apart from that, it's also a big privacy nightmare because this would force Android users to use an official Google-enabled Android build, which is basically spyware. And many privacy advocates are sounding the alarm on this, like the Electronic Frontier Foundation. This whole age verification thing is supposed let's have fewer barriers for companies because it's written by a lobby, and there's an environmental goal in there, which is the least detailed of all of them. Yes. To reach these objectives, what they propose is and software, which for the most part, and with the EU funding, making sure that we have startups able to take advantage of said software and standards, and making sure that countries prioritize open source solutions. It's the usual public money. They also added open source first and European preference. The document then outlines why an EU open is needed, which we all know why. The current landscape, which isn't that great currently, apart from a lot of reproduced software. They also point obstacles, notably the lack of standards for those standards for open stuff already everywhere, funding and investment hurdles, which, yeah, that's an issue. Adoption barriers, which also is an issue, and the skill gap, because obviously you need to train people to use that open source. Their actual proposal follows with a few actions, like defining tech specs as the open standard for launch. So the usual. They also propose the creation of a dedicated EU open source fund, like what GitHub recently pushed for. Well, but I would much rather it be funded by EU companies and smaller ones than GitHub and Microsoft, obviously. Now, this is all wishful thinking for now. It's not something that the EU is actively working on. It's just a piece of paper, well, a paper written by a lobby. So there's no telling if something happens with that. And also, it is being written by a lobby. So obviously, it's going to place companies first and not individuals. But still, it is nice to have the European Commission push for that thing, even though, as we've seen, we don't really know where they really stand on that digital sovereignty stuff. It kind of looks like they don't really know themselves, or they are making conflicting opinions and efforts. Open source and Linux had in like one big geopolitical entity would projects actually materialize and happen. I don't think amount to anything. Well, that's gonna be it. Answer Tuxedo Computers. So if you are a regular watcher or listener of my stuff,
First time listener, long time speaker. Wow, well, easy. Bondi Beach. Ask you where to buy McDonald's. Because no one did any action, they just the wear and tear. They don't even move on track. And they like these. I just see it against now. Oh, retards. Cities. Sorry, Germany, you're selling cars to retards. Well, Audi. It's not going to the Audi. Audi. Correct. Kia, Malakia. I feel like I'm going to look. Inner dialogue on. Oh, what are you offering me? What? This walk, this 5 minutes walk. I'm just walking is healthy, bro. And it's not even raining. So just gonna pick you up, bro.
New message from Aussie. Hi, sorry, will be 5 minutes.
5 minutes to me is 5 hours. Makes sense. This is what it is. 5 minutes to you is 5 hours to me. That's better. I'm definitely not taking this one, so just gonna see you later. What is safety reasons? Yeah, not really safe. Right. Just walk, dude. Minus walk. Stupid read. Try to better. And obviously that would be like $1, $2. Not today, Satan. Not today. Dude, this is one of the funniest rods ever. Lady. Now it's quick to change. That's what we do in narrow streets. It's super dangerous. You have to drive like 3K an hour not to drive better. It's scared. The little ball comes out and they hide the ball. No. Oh my god, oh my god, think about the kids. They always treat us like that. Mostly on the internet and Reddit, that's retards hang out. The literal ones. Okay, we're in a situation. Should we watch another video? Oh my god. Die. Just shoot me in the head, kill me, just send me a heart attack. Good shit. The real reason, kid.
New message from RC. A friend is just is on walking out.
Yo, I don't know, bro. I think I'm. See you later, guys. I don't think so. I'm not here to waste my time. We're not fighting spiders. See you later, alligator. People, dude. Not that I try, I did, and it didn't work out for me. I just waste my petrol. My thought could be thinking about on that beach. I like Bondi beaches. Dude, that was what? $5. What a shame. Man, I could have $5 now. But I'll be still waiting. You actually people leaving or something? This is the worst step you gone to. The worst riding. These people are cut like that. It's not even one turning. See, just guess what? Chicken butt. So this vibe is screaming, I have more money than sense. You know what I'm saying? That's the vibe. Let's pretend that we rich. I hate poor people. When they are the poor, actually. They hate themselves. All they have is things. Let my friend put my shoes and I will just be there in 3 hours, okay? It's just like, you know, the comfort zone. Is that okay? Or... It's not funny. Improve your sense of humor. Yeah, I think. Comments in chat. Getting Gemini. Why? Why? Don't listen to you. You don't pay my bills. But it's not a bad idea. So let's go to Gemini. And that's some philosophical shit. I feel famous. The guy's taking pictures of me. Gemini, are you serious?
Strange situation. Could you tell what happened?
Gemini, are you that?
I'm not sure what you mean by damp. Could you clarify?
Like Donald Trump. Trump. Are you drunk? Are you drunk? Don't worry.
I'm not sure what you mean by drunk.
Don't worry, I'm wearing my blue jeans, okay? I'm allowed. What colors are your jeans? You hear me? Okay, I'm happy with that. What colors are your jeans, Gemini? Repeat question.
That's wonderful to hear. What?
Yo, Gemini, are you on drugs? Drugs. The legal
I'm
ones.
here to listen. What's on your mind?
Are you on drugs? The legal ones, like this aspirin and all that shit. No, coffee is aspirin with caffeine. I heard the other day that. Is coffee aspirin with caffeine?
I can't find any information that suggests aspirin with caffeine.
Because aspirin, what it does, it thinners your blood, right? Rush, and then you thinner.
Oh, I see. You're wondering if coffee thins your blood like aspirin does, right? Coffee and aspirin do affect the body in different ways. Aspirin is known to thin the blood, while coffee acts more as a stimulant.
But that stimulant goes faster to your brain, right? Like a rush.
Caffeine is a stimulant, so it does get absorbed into your bloodstream pretty quickly. Start feeling the effects within 15 to 45 minutes of
A coffee then. Where is the closest place I can get a coffee, Gemini? We need one.
There are 5 coffee shops. The 3 closest are up South Bondi, about 350 meters away. Marcelo's Cafe and Gallery.
Marcelo, that's my friend Marcelo. Oh my God, Marcelo, you are a fucking legend. Marcelo. Oh. Insecure. Gemini. Why people don't trust me because I look weird? They say, oh, a pirate. Oh my God, he's a pirate. Be careful. He's trying to trick me. And I think the other person, they almost killed him. They say, thank you for not killing me, bro. The other guy was nice to stop. That was my bad for stopping. I should just keep doing. Anyway, Gemini, just tell me, can you just make an aspirin with a little bit of caffeine? Let's call sport drink. Can we make a sport drink like that? Let's put less sugar and say we healthy.
I understand you're looking for a drink with aspirin and a little caffeine, like a sports drink but healthier. However, provide instructions for making that. It's important to be careful fixing as it can be dangerous.
That's dangerous.
Aspirin and caffeine are dangerous because they can both irritate your stomach. This increases your risk of side effects like heartburn, nausea, and stomach bleeding.
Does it make
Yes, mixing aspirin and caffeine can make you sick to your stomach. It can also cause other problems like heartburn, nausea, and even stomach bleeding.
Wow, stomach bleeding. Deal with that. Is anything that I can
Causing the bleeding, and recommend the best for you.
What if I? That's a joke.
Talking to your hand can be a way, but it's not a substitute for professional medical advice. If you're concerned about stomach bleeding,
Is it Dr. Dre a doctor?
no. Dr. Dre is a famous rapper and producer, not a medical doctor. Is there anything else I can help you with?
How about the blue flower guy?
Doctor. Okay, I understand. You're looking for a real doctor.
Is it Dr. Octagon?
I'm sorry, I don't know who Drive Octagon is. Could you tell me more about them?
Dr. Octagon? You don't know the blue flower guy, the Earth people? Born in Jupiter?
I'm sorry, I don't know who Drive Octagon is. Could you tell me more about them?
That's all I know.
Okay, I understand.
Okay,
You're
how are
looking
you?
for a doctor, but you're not.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. Going to a little bait? Yeah. Sweet. Huh? Yeah, okay, now. Yeah. Oh, we just jumped in. Yeah. Yeah. So you're gonna okay, drop down. Okay. No worries. See you later.
Question. Yeah. Yeah, so where you see everyone else doing really well. Which is right. Gibberish. Was it the gym? It's like, activity is the classroom. It's exams, like reading and hey, how you going? Hey, Zachy. Hi. How are you? Miss ya. Said I miss ya. Hello, hello, Brandy. How are you? Hi. Oh, we had to drive straight to like the licensing center. Like, no, straight to the licensing. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, so you might get rich. Yeah.
believe it. Someone's like, I can't believe you were just telling me that story a few days ago. And this is the same. Because they've moved house recently as well, so it's like the same. Must be going down progress. I don't know. Hey, mate. Hi. Hey. Oh, it's called the done. Yeah, it's called the Ghost. Hi. It's like spitting. It's just like spitting. What about it? Yo. Hey, Zach. Well, I'll speak to the sub. I'll give you a holler. Oh. 6. Yeah, doesn't much matter, right? All right, I'll speak to you both later then. Bye, Zach. Bye. Miss you. Bye. Oh, is that what you said they cut? Oh, yeah. That's just one. So funny. Well, it's the same. It's the same. Shit. But lovely like that. Still up. See what it's about. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like further down. It's quite tall. Like 10, 20 bucks. Up now, in the course. I think I have Wednesday, Thursday, if I get a couple of drinks. What's the range anyway?
Oh, it's that 10. That was already short.
First one?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it was. Yeah, yeah. So that
Park
like
right
near the
now, or
park.
what?
Who does that little park?
Yeah.
Stuck up near that.
But I don't think you can go straight to green for that big tree.
That's it, yeah, you're gonna play big fade, yeah. Right.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
Quick math. Okay, good. $10 one side. Wow, $12 for 4 hours work. I think this is the top. I feel like I live in some third world country. $12, not bad. $12, bro. What am I gonna do with $12, man? I think I'm gonna spend only once. $12 for hours is not bad. I think that, oh my God, can't believe it. So that's an exchange of 12 Australian dollars to American dollars. You get an idea. I make six American dollars for 4 hours for this time. I think that's a great deal. I spent half of my tank, so that's another almost $50. So I'm paying about $40 for working 4 hours. I think paying to work is the future. When you pay to work, you're free. It's the price of freedom. You pay to work. Just handle people that you probably wouldn't handle in a real life. $12. What we're gonna do? $12, bro. I'm gonna kill myself. That's what I'm gonna do. $12. Holy shit. For 4 hours. This is $6. What I did now is $6. So it would be like $3 American for what I did now. For taking these guys. They probably paying easy $20 or more. So that would be $10 each. Very good deal. It's cheaper than the bus, bro. I just get $3 out of that. Not bad. I'm gonna go home. Fuck off, everyone.